Hey, beautiful people. Welcome to the Interweave podcast. It's your favorite space for real conversations about life, love, and everything in between. And on today's episode, we're talking about something deeply and incredibly universal. But it is something incredibly universal, bringing it down to, how it affects us as Black people. And we're discussing toxicity and tension in Black marriages, in modern day Black marriages. Marriages, they're not easy. They take work, patience, and understanding, and a lot more challenging. Where we have to deal with the pressures of societal expectations, dealing with generational traumas, and the chaos of modern day life. Many of these things leave a lot of us wondering, can we really do this thing? Can our marriages work? So in this episode, we'll unpack the unique struggles, facing Black marriages, and also the role that women have to play in ensuring that the world is a better place, because we are pace setters. Sit back and enjoy, because it is going to be something amazing. In today's episode, we're discussing toxicity and tension in modern-day Black marriages. So the first question is, what behaviors do you see in Black marriages that tends to look like toxicity, or that becomes toxic and then creates tension?
Well, the oldest in the book is nagging. A lot of women are nag. But the ones that know nag, they know they nag, and the ones that are not aware that they nag, but they nag. Issues of disobedience, something that looks as simple as that, can lead to great calamities. Issues of fiduciary transparency.
Okay.
For the women who work, be transparent about their expenses. Be transparent about their assets, things that they acquire. I know women who build a house not in their husband's name, and the husband later finds out many years later that such happened.
Here's even an example of the man that was parenting his wife. Heard about that? So,
of course, automatically you should know that you're not really married again. Then you're something else. The earlier you wake up from that thing, the better. So, in issues like that, can reflect toxicity and can raise stress levels that can lead to a complete breakdown in complication. And of course, the most commercial of reasons, things like adultery, cheating. In our society now, there are rampant cases of DNA mishaps, if I'm to put it that way, where a man has 4 children, 3 are not his. So, yeah, that's what I'll sum as
character behaviors. Oh, okay. So this challenges that you've mentioned now, are they just unique to Black couples, or is it different across different groups?
Well, it's there are universal problems.
Okay.
There are universal problems. The Blacks and the Latinos and the Asians and the Arabs are a lot more traditional than their white counterparts. But when we narrow it down to the Blacks suffer from an identity crisis, because the Blacks over the last 50 years have positioned themselves to soak up characters and cultures and the behavioral patterns of the Western world.
Okay.
And because they have done that over time and perfected in it, they suffer from what I will call, my psychological deduction is they suffer from what I call an identity crisis. Because at the end of the day, they are neither white nor Black. They want to be treated the way the white women are treated. They make their hair like the white women. They paint their nails like the white women. They want their lashes to be like white women. So at the end of the day, the most prominent race that has the most prominent problems are the Black people. Now, there's a fundamental reason why the whites, I don't like talking about other races. I like to conform to our own people.
Yeah.
But if I'm to touch on it a bit, I would say that the white women are a lot more feminine. they're a lot more softer. They're a lot more unassuming. So even with the level of legal and what I'll refer to as jurisdictional edge they've given white people, the women in their feminine elements, because of their femininity and their softness, it does not look as toxic as when you have a black woman within this equation.
That's interesting.
Because the black woman is, I always tell people, I say, Nigerian women especially, because I do not compare Nigerian women with the rest of African women. Nigerian women are a lot more aggressive. They're a lot more entitled. And they tend to believe that everything, settles are out there. So, it's always very important for us to understand that as Black people, we come from a culture that has existed for thousands of years, a culture that helped us continue our lineage, a culture that established our ancestors. And because we have deviated from these standards, from this culture, it has created a lot of problems. First and foremost, the man is the leader of family. He is the commander-in-chief, unquestionable leader of every family enterprise. And the woman supports his vision. Interesting. Now, because we have deviated from the will of God, deviated from the tradition of our ancestors, we now have a situation of chaos, where the women want their voices to be heard. They speak loudly. They're very aggressive. They're very opinionated. Things that we're not seeing in our grandmothers and great-grandmothers. They're the things we begin to see today.
Okay.
And that aggressive nature transcends even into the way that they choose their mates, in the way that they court, like in relationships between men and women in the Black communities, where the Black women, deep down in their hearts, they want men who are already complete. And when they meet men who are complete and find out that those men are not available to them, they still complain about it. When they meet men who are complete and find out that the people who help them reach that completion are active participants in that man's life, they have a problem with it. Like a lot of women will tell you underground that they prefer their future husband's mothers to be dead. It's a part of a sequence of a chain of reactions of toxic mentality and toxic psychology that has currently today isolated the modern day Black woman.
That's really broad and very interesting, insight that you've given us here. So with everything you've said, you think that the modern day society, because it's very obvious that the times of our grandparents and great-grandparents are completely different. So do you think that the modern day society has a different view of love that has invariably affected relationship and marriages?
The major problem here is, in capital letters, is a lack of upbringing. The standards of upbringing have been reduced drastically, almost to zero, especially as regards the upbringing, the grooming of women, female children. The primary purpose of any given female child is to procreate.
Okay.
And to effectively procreate and create an enabling environment, the woman must learn and has to be groomed to submit to a man's will. Now, when you are not giving that upbringing, or you do not have a real strong father figure to observe and watch and learn from, that is what has led to the catastrophic failure of the kind of black women we have today.
So it's an upbringing problem.
It's an upbringing, a lack of grooming issue. And even those who are intentional about grooming fail to groom properly. Now, what do I mean by that? When you train a girl to compete with a guy, ultimately, that spirit of competition remains in her even as an adult. And where does she draw the line between being competitive and being submissive? There's no threshold for that transition point at any point in her life. She just carries along with that mentality.
Wow.
So you have a situation in society where a lot of black women are statutory unmarriable.
But I've heard people say that the traditional roles that we have to go by as black people has constituted to a lot of the stress that people face in marriages. What do you think about that?
Can you rephrase? What do you mean by traditional?
Okay, so like what you just narrated about training a child to be competitive, and then as an adult, she still sticks to a competition mindset. Now, usually, women are supposed to be nurturers and child bearers, blah, blah, blah. But now, that's the traditional role, and the man is supposed to be the provider. But now, the reverse is like the case, where men are now working, are now in the workforce, they're contributing financially and otherwise, things that they shouldn't do. So now I've heard people say that this new rules has contributed to a lot of stress in marriages.
Well, you can say that to a degree, even though I beg to disagree.
Okay.
Now, in the name of femininity, women have risen, which is that competition I'm talking about. They've risen to a point where they are involved in, I would say, almost everything that men are involved in. Because at the end of the day, they're not doing everything a man does. For instance, the man built this world. All the structures, the buildings, the sky rises, the dams, everything you see in this world is built by men. Women will never be able to do that.
So a woman bettered the people that...
They better, that is their traditional role, their statutory role. But men build this world.
So without women, there wouldn't be people to build the world, actually.
That's what I'm saying. That is their role. It doesn't make them supersede their original hierarchical position, which is to support and submit to a man.
Okay.
That is the way it should be. In any enterprise where there is no hierarchy, where there are no clear reporting lines, there will be chaos. Now, what women fail to understand is that when they hear that word submission, they go crazy, like parasites that are being given the teeth of ginger. But the truth is, when you understand the power that is within the femininity of a woman, when you understand the power, the influence that is within the act of submission, the idea of submission itself, you begin to see a pattern of actual influence from women who have embraced their original nature. Because a woman that does not challenge a man is not inferior to that man.
Awful. Okay.
She actually has more influence over him than otherwise. Because when a man sees that you do not challenge him, he usually trusts you.
Wow.
You know? So, that is just the key point. No matter how much women fight for their equal rights, a woman cannot be an effective soldier. In fact, she'll be more or less a distraction in battalion lines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the key element here is the beauty of every woman is in her unassuming nature, in her element of femininity. But a lot of black women are very aggressive.
Okay.
A lot of black women are very opinionated. They are very loud. They want to be heard. And that is not femininity. That is wildness.
Okay. You seem to be having this conversation on one side. We're talking about black marriages, remember, and in a marriage, there are two people involved.
Yeah.
So, what are the toxic patterns that men also, exhibiting?
The reason why I talk about shapes of the feminist side is because it is not a competition. The women need to fall in line first for the men to be able to respond to that evolutionary transition. That change. When you make it look like it's this and that, tit for tat, well, we're trying to talk towards the right conditioning that will lead to lesser or absolutely no toxicity.
Okay.
So when you try to balance it out and say, oh, the men are also no. Because even the way God put it, women have to do their role first, and then the men do their own next.
So is that to say that the men do not also contribute to attention? Or
I think the men have not even given a chance to be men. Women want men to become women.
Why is that?
Because the women want men to become women. And the more masculinity you show, the more you are seen as toxic. It's a look but don't touch but don't taste situation.
So would you say that these toxic patterns are more of personal issues than, outside factors?
That you refuse it.
Would you say that these toxic patterns now that you just highlighted are more of personal issues, yes, than, other factors that contribute to them?
They're not first-hand issues. Because like I said, many black women do not have father figures.
Okay.
And the ones that do have not been properly orientated in what their place is in the destiny of mankind.
Okay.
The primary purpose of a woman is to procreate. And to do that, you have to fall within the required needs of the man. It's not about the woman, it's about the man. What does this man want? How can I fit? How can I become an irreplaceable asset in his life? You understand?
Yeah.
Because it's the malfunctioning of the modern day woman that is making an evolutionary malfunction in the modern day man. Modern day man is not allowed to be a man. Modern day man is under attack. The modern day man is disenfranchised. Socioculturally speaking, from the Western standpoint, and socioeconomically speaking. Now, what do I mean by that? In the Western world, especially Europe and America, women have an upper hand. And because of that, women have been given a lot more opportunity than the men. And because of that, women are a lot more seen to have custody over children in the eventuality of a divorce than the men. In fact, in the hierarchy of priority in the Western world, even dogs come before men. And then on a global level, the repositioning of woman's place has affected men in the sense that because of the unstable global economy, women have a lot more opportunity than men. A lot more women have been economically empowered than the men. And then because of that, economically empowered women are looking for economically empowered men who are far less in number than they were ever before.
Wow. This isn't true.
And what they fail to understand about, or what the economically empowered women fail to understand about man is, what the man brings to the table is not just if he can provide, especially as a woman that is already economically empowered. A man brings his masculinity to the table. He brings his protection to the table. He brings his idea to the table. He brings his presence to the table. A man can even take care of the children when he has. There's a lot he can do. It's not just about providing.
Yeah, I agree with you. So that being said, our social media, created unrealistic expectations for Black couples and this so-called relationship goals. How has social media created unrealistic expectations for Black couples?
I would say that he who wants to be deceived will be deceived. And he who builds his world around social media will die, even before the actual death. Social media is a means of entertainment. It's not a platform to be able to measure how well or how not well they're doing. Because any reasonable person knows that 98% of the things that you see on social media is what people want you to see. It's not the reality of things, but it has created a cultural shift in perception of what is expected in a lot of relationships, whether we like it or not. And it has filled the gap that the poor or absolutely no training from the parents has left to fill those gaps.
Wow, okay.
So social media has democratized the value system of relationships and created a kind of a voting pattern where they shouldn't have been a voting pattern in the first place. Because where there are laws that have worked for thousands of years, if something is not broken, why you pursue it?
Absolutely, I agree with that. And that goes to show that this social media has probably made and mad the society. There are two sides to every story. Or you mentioned the toxic patterns that you see in the Black marriages. And the question is, how do we fix, or how can couples fix these issues?
Couples can fix these issues by going back to God. I'm not a religious man, but God has the answers to the questions that we continuously ask ourselves. We can lie to others, but we cannot lie to ourselves. And he who lies to himself is dead. Now, whatever your temperament is, whatever it is that, wherever it is you think you are, you must learn that fundamentally a man interprets respect as love. That is a man's understanding of your commitment to him. And even though a man may fail you as many times as possible, but he is just a man, it does not give room for you to disrespect him or for you to become a distraction. There are ways of communicating your disappointment as a woman without ruffling his feathers. And whether it is or not men are on point or are stupid, it's in the woman's best interest to always represent herself properly and not evolve into some negative form because of whatever negative feedback she's getting from the men.
Okay.
That is where we need to avoid competition. And the diplomacy of the church, which they have done for so long in order to keep the numbers in the church and not to upset people, even though the truth is gradually coming out. The fact is that man and woman are not equal. But the woman is an irreplaceable factor in any man's life that she has fully committed herself to. The man cannot do it without the woman, but it does not make them equal. But understanding that in its sense gives the woman strength, gives her purpose, and more especially, and more importantly, gives her influence. Would you rather be the person that can get your man to do what you want him to, or would you rather be the woman that can stand in the face of your husband and there's a face up and nothing works? Because a lot of times women see things that men cannot. But the way you communicate your thoughts, my dad always tells me something. He said, when you drag your right, even if something is your right, when you drag your right to a certain degree of negativity, you become prodigal.
Absolutely, I agree. So it's safe to say that women are actually the pace setter, no matter how much we try to shy away from it.
Oh yes, the man will respond to the attitude of the woman. The man is not just going to see. Let's come down to Nigerian relationships. 95% of the men that cheat in marriages, 95% of the Nigerian men that cheat in marriages still love their wives.
Okay. Now, why do men actually cheat? It's part of the toxic patterns. So what's the major reason behind
cheating? Became a terminology since the era of feminism.
Okay.
Because from the beginning of time, men have always been polygamous in nature. And the insistence or the shade that has now been accustomed to cheating from men has even caused an evolutionary biological situation.
What?
I'll give you an instance. The rampant prostrate issues we have that men have.
Okay.
Even if your woman can satisfy you
31 times in a month,
as much times as is biologically required, women at some point in their lives begin to
dwindle down and
and besides, let's be very factual. Being in one partner all the days of your life without any kind of, to be very frank, any kind of, mixture, you can hit super saturation. There are couples that go for a long time without having sex. Not because they don't love each other, but because they had hit super saturation on the physical note. But bringing a new body into that equation and you see the spark.
Okay, so you're saying that, couples should find ways to spice it up.
Yes, they have to find ways that are peculiar to their mental, psychological, and emotional dispositions to keep themselves going.
So in other words, you're saying that what men do is not cheating. We haven't just found the right term for it, I guess.
The term has always been there, is polygamy. Men are polygamous.
Yeah, well, it's not some cheating.
And the law allows both traditional laws, the Arab laws, and any other law. But the law does not allow for women to have a married two husbands.
There's polyamory.
It's not.
It's the law. It's polyamory. In fact, we were being taught polyamory is cool as a form of marriage.
Yeah. Where did
polyamory, polyandry.
Where the person that?
There was even a story that surfaced online where it said woman to four husbands.
A name has been deployed and given to this situation, or it's not legal.
I don't think that's true entirely. I don't think that's entirely.
It's not legal. A woman cannot marry more than one man. It's not legal. So even though it has been given a terminology, a name, a title, that does not make it legal.
Okay.
But a man can marry more than one wife. A man is entitled to marry more than one wife.
Yeah. Okay. That being said, we've been talking to married couples and how to cope with this, the patterns to look out for. Now, for singles who are not married or preparing to get married, how can they prepare for a healthy marriage?
First and foremost, there's no hard and fast rule when it comes to finding a suitable mate. But there are social calculations and social deductions that can be made to reduce your risk to the barest minimum. So from an ideological standpoint, be it man or woman, it's always important to look for a man or a woman who shares a similar upbringing with you.
Okay.
It reduces your risk to the barest minimum. You cannot compare a child who grew up watching cartoons with a child who grew up watching Aki and Papa. With all due respect and sense of respect, they are not the same people. They do not share the same kind of imagination. One is limited, the other is not. That's number one. Number two is, a lot of times when black people meet, they are paying attention to the wrong thing. You have to listen for what he or she did not say most of the time in order to understand them better, not necessarily listen to what they said. And when you pay attention to what they did not say, everything that is about them will be known to you. A lot of times, the people we deal with or we try to date, they make themselves known to us, but we fail to pay attention.
Pay attention, because we're in love.
Unless
blinded by love.
Not just paying enough attention.
Okay. But usually there's this thing that happens when you're in a relationship or when you're in love. People around tend to see the things or the characteristics in your partner that you don't see, but you're in love with this person, you're in a relationship with this person. Why does that happen?
Why do coaches, sports coaches get paid? All these basketball coaches, football coaches, why do they get paid so much money? Because somebody who observes from the outside has a more powerful idea of what is going on in that situation, because they are detached emotionally, mentally, and physically from that thing. But they are committed from an academic standpoint to see how that thing can excel. So they are in the best position to determine what works and what does not work.
Trust me.
The best way for singles to prepare is, first of all, your parents must have prepared it best.
Okay.
Because if you observe, even with our men, they are never really groomed to be men. They make it up as they go.
Yep, exactly.
They make it up as they go. There's a lesser emphasis on the training of boys than there is on the girls.
Yeah, and I feel like that's cheating, because when everybody's head is working properly, we'll have a more functional society. This role, grooming and all, like, it's not left for one person. So it shouldn't be a function for one person to carry. So I feel like this whole trouble began from, like you said, it sprung from upbringing issues. If a man is not brought up properly by his mother, he's going to pass on the same thing to his children and then not bring them up properly. And we have a cycle of...
It is an unwritten rule that in the name of self-preservation, the women need a lot more protection and a lot more guidance than the boys.
Okay.
That the guys are less likely to create an embarrassing situation than the girls. So emphasis is placed more on, there's greater emphasis on the girls,
Yeah.
boys.
By the end of the day, the guys still end up doing check the prisons. We have more males in the prison.
Yes, like I said, because greater emphasis on the. But when it comes to the issues of prison, that's a completely different ballgame. Here in Nigeria, the prison system is not built for instance, in the manner that the American prison system is built. In America, whether you like it or not, there's a systematic attack on Black families.
Okay, that's a topic for another day. That's a topic for another day. Finally, before we call it a wrap, for people who are, in toxic relationship, how can they recognize? One thing to recognize, because a lot of people are in, relationships that are toxic, but they don't recognize that this is toxic. Now, how can they recognize it and be able to fix the toxicity? So how can they recognize that this is a toxic arrangement and be able to, fix their own role? Because I feel like it all begins with you. So what's your advice?
My advice is that we as human beings, we are a work in progress. Never ever think that you've gotten to a point where we do not need to learn anymore. Because when you stop learning, you not only become a liability to yourself, you become a liability to those around. And I give you a quick example. This situation is a lot more complex than you've expressed it. Why? In the sense that there are people who do not even recognize that they are in toxic relationships because they are inherently toxic themselves. They live off toxic situations. Toxic situation validates them. Let me give you a quick example. There are women that like to be beaten up by their men. And when you don't beat them up every now and then, they feel like the man is not committed to them. So a man's physical assault on them is what validates the man's commitment to the relationship with them. That's very sad. But that's sad is a fact.
Really sad.
So how do you want to deal with somebody who has such a toxic mentality?
Just remove yourself around. Don't even proceed.
So the first line of action is what you do for you.
Okay. So if you're in a toxic situation, remember that the first line of action is to know what is good for you. And as much as possible, remove yourself from the toxicity and the tension that you found yourself in. And that brings us to the end of today's episode on the Interview podcast. So everyone listening, we hope that this episode resonated with you. Do also share this with someone who needs to hear this. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and follow us for more engaging content. Remember that love is a journey, one that we can navigate together with patience, effort, and understanding. Until next time, take care of yourselves and your relationship. Hello, Fedora.